All right, everybody. How are we doing? Welcome back to a new season of the Think On It podcast.
Whoa.
I know. Whoa. It is season 2 of the Think On It podcast
2022
of 2020. First episode of 2022. We got a new year, a new season, and we are so excited to have a new guest. I mean, Wade has actually been on the podcast one other time with Charlene, and we talked about I Said This, You Heard That, raising great kids, and the temperaments stuff, which was a lot of fun. We had a good time that day. So go back and check out that episode if you haven't seen it already. But Wade, we're here to talk about a new topic, and Grace and I are just really excited to have you on with us. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a good time. And Wade, Grace and I both thought that Wade has some really good perspective for the topic that we're going to talk about today. So, and I will not steal from that. I'm going to let Grayson get into that in just a second. But we did start a new series on Sunday mornings this year. And that's called Where Are You Going? And we're talking about stages of faith, stages of development in a person's faith. And while I understand it's the kind of thing that can easily maybe be treated like a linear, put everybody into a box sort of a thing, and that's not what we're doing. It's not a one size fits all. It's not the same for every single person, but there are logical progressions in a person's faith development. And so that's kind of what we've been talking about. And so this last Sunday, Greg talked about the first stage, or one of the stages. We won't say first because it's not linear, but one of the stages, and that is the explore stage. And Grayson, give us an overview of what the explore stage is.
Yeah. So we believe that we're really working off of a framework where there's like primarily 4 main stages of someone's walk with Jesus. First, exploration, building, owning, and thriving. And somewhere in there, there's generally a wilderness phase, which is going to kind of be a recurring theme through the whole series and through the podcast. But exploration, it's really this stage where faith is all about someone discovering God, having a curiosity, having a sense of awe, or, you know, maybe something really bad happens and they have a need. Generally, people are desiring some kind of greater meaning in life. They want their questions answered, and they're curious and really open to finding those answers. So, you know, sometimes people go to church, sometimes people go to yoga class, but most of the time people, when they're in this phase, are open to answers from a variety of places. But we're hoping that people come to Faircreek and come to church to really explore faith. And statistically, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to have Wade on today, statistically, most people put their faith in Jesus and start following Jesus before they turn 18. That's the case for the vast majority of people. I mean, there are obviously tons of adults that put their faith in Jesus as well.
Sure.
But by and large, exploration is really happening when people are in student ministry, when people are in children's ministry. So Wade, I mean, this is your bread and butter. Like, what are some observations that you've seen with students exploring faith? What are some common things that you see, you know, common questions? Where are students at today with exploring faith?
Well, one of the things that I've seen is the opportunity for exploration is probably larger than it's ever been before because of the great mighty Google. So
True.
Students are looking for it and they have questions. There's tons of questions, but who's giving them the right answers?
Yeah.
I think that's what we're wrestling with when we talk about exploration, whether it's students or adults. Exploration is huge, but in today's society, it goes back to what we model at home. I believe parents are the biggest influence to a child or a student's growth in their faith.
Yeah.
So that's one of the large things. But how do you do that in a way that a kid's not going to just reject what you say? And that's what I love about what we do here at Faircreek is just that opportunity that you can come into a safe environment, whether it's at the church or what we're pushing parents to do at home is that discipleship and creating a safe environment for that. So that's one of the observations that I've seen within student ministry. For parents, though, that's a tough challenge. Like, you're raising these kids and what you're going to teach them is going to last for eternity. Oh my
Man.
word.
That's something to think about.
That's heavy.
So
It really is.
So kind of playing off of that, Wade, what are some things you would tell parents that have students or kids in elementary school, preschool, really whatever age, and they're exploring faith, they have questions. What is some advice that you would give as a pastor and as a father? You have a daughter in college now, and then 2 high schoolers now, or is it a middle
High
school
school
or high
and middle
school?
school.
So you really have like the whole gambit.
The trifecta.
The trifecta. Yeah. So, what kind of advice, what would you tell a parent for they have a kid, a son, a daughter who's really in this phase where they're curious, they've got questions, they're trying to figure out if this Christianity thing is really for them?
I would tell any person, not just a parent, model what you want repeated. If we model what we want to have in our life, our kids or grandkids or coworker, they're going to seek that same thing. So if I want a lot of money and I'm going to do that at my job, that's what I'm going to model. If I want a relationship with Jesus, that's what I have to model for my kids to understand this is the most important thing. Yeah. So modeling is one of those things. And we've had this capacity in our house where it's been no topic is off the table. So I'm like, if you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. And that's scary sometimes.
It can be.
My son can.
Questions.
He can ask some stuff. And I'm like, oh my word.
Yeah.
But those are 2 aspects that we have to model that. And I think that for the church, if we're going to be a church that unchurched or de-churched people love, we got to model what we're willing to deal with. So that's a tough one. And then for us, got to talk about it. So those questions have to be answered. And if we can do it in an environment where our sons and daughters can feel like I can ask mom and dad about this, that's a huge win. Yeah. So
yeah, it's an interesting thing you talk about modeling because, I've had plenty of people come up to me and through the course of conversations be like, man, I just wish my kid would do, devotions every day. I've been trying to get them to do devotions every day, but they don't do it, or whatever. And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, that's good. We want them to do that. And I even think in my own life, I want for my kids to do that too. But it's also easy. Then we also have our own routines, right? And the thing that I started thinking about and I had modeled for me in my life, even though my dad never made any kind of point about it to like talk about it or whatever, it was just kind of an observation thing, right? Was growing up, we had 1 bathroom and all of us had to get ready and around about the same time. Me, a brother, and my dad were all getting ready at about the same time. And so we just kind of took turns, and I would wake up and my dad would already have part of his routine done. And he would be sitting there reading the Bible while one of us was getting in the shower or doing whatever our next part of the routine was. And I just observed that every single day. And I just thought, if he got up earlier and did that while I was still in bed, he would still get the benefit of doing those devotions, but I never would have seen him do that. So I would never know that it existed or that it was happening. And again, it wasn't like a big thing that he made a point to say, I'm going to make sure you see me when you do when I do my devotions. And maybe he thought that privately. I don't know. Never asked him. Probably should ask him. But, I think that about parents too. Sometimes when I get asked that question, like, how do I get my kids to do devotions every day? It's like, well, do you do it? If they saw you doing it, that would mean a lot more than you telling them to do it.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so I think about that myself too, because a lot of times my own personal devotion life is either before the kids get up or after they've gone to bed. And that's fine because I get quiet time that way, which is nice, but then they never observe me doing that. So there's a balance there. I think it's important that they see you doing it.
And as children, it's easy to do those Bible studies with them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Some of those Old Testament stories that are just really cool. But as I hit middle school and high school, telling them to do something,
right?
I've learned quite a bit. Does not work.
Not always or ever.
Yeah, because they can't hear it.
That's right. They don't.
But when it's being modeled, when they can see it and observe it, there's something special about that. Yeah. I was in the same boat. My dad did it every morning. So I didn't realize it until I was much older that was having an impact on me. That was impacting my life.
Right.
So that modeling is a big one. And then creating that safe environment, whether at church or at home, where, you know what, let's talk about some of these things.
Right.
If you have questions, let's deal with it.
Right. The thing to think about there, I think, to me, is if a kid has a question that they're actually willing to ask their parent about, which is probably maybe seem unusual to some people who are watching or listening, then the reality of the situation is they have that question and they're asking someone.
Exactly.
And so wouldn't you, if that's the case, it's not a matter of, I don't want them to ask me that question. I'd rather it just not be a question that they think about. Okay, well, that's nice pie in the sky thinking. But the reality is they have that question. So wouldn't you want to create the environment where they ask you instead of someone else? I would think that you would want to do that. So
because as parents, you're the ones that they trust the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really kind of what I'm hearing is like, for you guys as parents, it's less about like, oh, like I took them on this big retreat and it was this big one-time thing. You guys are really talking about a lot of really small things that you're just doing consistently.
Yeah.
And continuing to model that, continuing to create a safe place. and I love what you said about like having a place and a home where they're able to ask questions. I was just recently reading a book called After Doubt. It's really on deconstruction, which kind of plays into the wilderness phase. And really it can happen in between a lot of these phases when people really start to tear down their faith. And he said that a lot of times people tear down their faith when they get to college or when they become a young adult because they never had the space to ask the questions that they really wanted to ask.
Wow.
And that just stood out to me as like, man, if you like model it and you set up a home and a family where everything's safe to ask, there's nothing off limits, then you're really setting them up for success down the road when they get to their college philosophy class and they're really getting pushed back on what they truly believe.
Right. Yeah. Not that happens.
Not at all.
Right.
No.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
For sure. No, you know, it's interesting, Grayson, you mentioned like those single kind of like big event type of things. You take your kid on a retreat, or maybe you take them overseas and go on a missions trip or something like that. Those things are great and wonderful, and they can be very vitalizing and galvanizing single experiences that are really cool to have. It's great for students to have those types of things with other students. It's great for parents and kids to have those types of experiences together. And I haven't thought this out. It literally just came into my head at this moment. So nobody, hold me too tight to it, but I don't know that those types of experiences in and of themselves are going to bring about the type of transformation or life change that the small things that you're talking about, the daily, everyday routine things will do. Now, you may be able to point back to a conference or a mission trip or a retreat and say that's kind of where the page turned for me, or that's where I, started something new that I wasn't doing before. But that event is just a cool event that you maybe remember once in a while if you don't ever do anything with it afterwards, right? If you go and you learn something cool and new at a retreat and then that's the last time you ever think about it, then it's not life-changing for you. So it is going to be proved out, or the benefit of going on that, having that single event will be borne out through what changes in your life as a result of that and what kind of daily routine things. The small things make such a huge impact. Doing devotions every day, praying every day, spending time with God every single day, being involved in study with other people on a regular basis, and actually just digging into each other's lives and being invested in the lives of the people around you as well. That makes a much more of an impact. And to the point of parents being actively invested in the lives of your children, more so than just making sure you keep them alive until 18, and
then kick them out.
and then kick them out. But actually being invested in their life and what they care about and what's important to them and what type of people they turn out to be.
And I think that's a good part of it. Retreats are one aspect and they're awesome. That's why we do them.
Yeah.
But it's teamed with that parental side of things, the little things. So we do little things, but we also need to do those big things. So
Right.
It's a tag team. The hard part for parents, the rub, is are we willing to take some of the words that our kids are saying or what they're processing and not take them personally as a hit against us.
Yeah.
I've had that a few times in the past few years where one of them, they don't believe the same thing I do. Wow, that's tough. But we're looking at the big picture. We're not looking at these little things. We're looking at, look, they're exploring, they're learning this on their own, and we've got to support them.
Right. We want to encourage that.
Yeah. So it's scary, but I tell you what, it's cool to see.
And let's just be honest about it, right? Before people start to think, oh yeah, but you have wonderful children and you just have it easy. It's harder work to do the stuff we're talking about. It's harder work. And I'm not trying to say that as like a pat on the back for me and you or anybody else who's doing that stuff. I'm just saying it is going to be a conscious choice, maybe daily, to say, it's going to be a lot harder work for me to do those things, but it's so important. I have to do it. And you may have to choose that every single day to say the easier thing to do here would be to just leave my kid alone and not start an argument with them or whatever the case may be. But it's very worth it to say, I'm going to choose maybe the harder path to do the right thing by them.
Very much so.
Because it's harder work.
Yep.
It's definitely harder work.
But that also goes back to this whole exploration thing of whether you're at home or at work, to say, look, I'm going to take the harder path to take a coworker out to lunch.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
True.
So
right.
When we're talking about exploring, man, it's not easy, but I tell you what, the reward is amazing.
Right. And to the point that you're making, it doesn't just apply to your kids. If you are setting yourself up to be that safe place for people to be able to ask questions, and you're making yourself that kind of person, then if you have children, your kids will recognize that, your spouse will recognize that, your friends at work will recognize that, your friends at school will recognize that. And you can be that type of person for anyone. It could be a coworker, it could be, just other people that you brush shoulders with on a regular basis. They'll be like, man, Wade, I really feel like I can just go and ask him and he's not going to be offended by what I ask, or he's not going to think I'm an idiot because I asked a question that sounds stupid, or I can just ask him and he's not going to make a big deal out of it. We're just going to be able to have a conversation and talk. Like, people notice that.
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. And they talk about those things. So,
and it's important that we create spaces like that for people. And again, it's not about a place or an environment. It's about you choosing to be the type of person that people can go to like that.
Yep, exactly.
That's really a perfect segue into really what kind of the meat of what Greg was talking about on Sunday, which was, are we a church where it's safe for people to explore? And a lot of his challenge was like, are we doing these things? Are we willing to have the conversations? He taught out of John 3, where it's Nicodemus, his teacher of the law, who under the cover of darkness really asked Jesus all these questions. And Jesus is open to his questions. Jesus is willing to have the conversation. And I think there's so many takeaways for us, like not being so quick to judge, like loving people and not just like beating them over the head with truth because, it's God's word. But really like seeking to love people. I think ultimately like people feel safe when you make a connection with them and you're really seeking to understand their questions, what's behind their questions, where they're coming from, what happened, when they were in 12th grade and they have this terrible experience at church, like what's behind these questions where they're just now getting to this point where they're ready to explore. So I don't know, Wade, what are some things that you tell your small group leaders, or Matt, like what do you tell community group leaders or starting point leaders to really dig into, what's behind these questions and how do you form a connection with people?
What do you think?
Well, the one thought that I had was going back to that Nicodemus passage. John put in there, he came at night. He didn't want anybody to know what he was dealing with. So I love the thought of, he came in secrecy. Guys, don't look at me or judge me because of this. But that's the cool thing. Jesus welcomed him with open arms. So it's like, dude, come on in. Let's talk about that. So if that's the model that we have, let's model that same thing. And let's be honest with it. I think Greg was spot on Sunday when he said, you know what, this is a place where you can do that. So
that should tell us something. Nicodemus came at night because he knew, he was very well-versed and brought up and mixed up with the religious people of the day. He knew how they would respond to him.
Oh yeah.
If he just openly, one, just went and talked to Jesus, first of all. And second of all, if he asked questions that they were like, how could a person be asking this? And so like he knew what the response that generally people in his world would have. And I think that we're not so different today, at least from a perception standpoint. And I think a lot of times folks are going to think that they need to do it, under darkness may look different to us now. It might, instead of waiting till night until everybody's asleep and there's no lights because you don't have electricity and all that stuff, it might just be I shoot you a text or an email instead of actually coming and seeing you on a Sunday morning where other people can observe me doing that, right? But it's sad to me to think that Nicodemus had to go at night where nobody could see him, because he was maybe not, I don't know if he was worried about what other people's perception would be. He just knew that people would have a problem with it. And so he felt like he couldn't do that. I think that there's probably people out there who still feel that way.
Oh yeah.
That's why it's so important for us to, like you said, to be the type of people that allow for that to happen, and just, you don't beat them down, like you said, Grayson, and you don't belittle them and make them feel silly or stupid or ignorant for not knowing an answer to a question. You want to encourage that type of exploration to where they can just come and ask.
Yeah.
One of the cool things about that has been when I've had a student ask me, what about this? Instead of just giving them I know the answer, let's research it together.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
So
let's
good.
be real, and let's figure it out. Let's walk through it as friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those encouragements.
That's important.
Inspire a little curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's an important thing for a person's development too, is they'll own the conclusions better if you walk through it with them than if you just tell them, hey, this is how it is. You just deal with it. This is the way it is. Accept it. They're going to be like, they may agree, they may not agree. They walk away. Okay. And they're going to walk away very unfulfilled by the answer too. But if you actually walk through it with them, then they will own the conclusions that they come to, because they arrived at those conclusions on their own with some guidance and with some help, but on their own.
But I've also found that it helps me solidify what I believe when I can research it with somebody else as well. So
you mean we're allowed to have questions too?
About that.
We're allowed to still like think things like, hey, I see, because I'll be the first one to say, I've been at Faircreek for 6 years or something now, like, and I've been churched my whole entire life, raised in church and my whole life. I see some things differently now than I did when I was growing up. I mean, and that shouldn't sound shocking to say, right? It should just be like, well, yeah, of course, you grow, you learn, you all that stuff. But man, I'll tell you, in some church circles that I've been in before, to question the status quo or the norm is just like, why are you doing that? You can't do that. And it's like, no, I see some things differently today than I did, not only when I was a child, but even when I was in Bible college or when the first few years out of college. Like, I see some things differently now than I did then.
Big time.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
and that's really why we have Starting Point. And that's one of our environments at Faircreek that's really designed for people with doubts, with questions, to come in and have a safe place to be able to have a conversation and ask the questions that should be asked in a church, right? Like, for too long, the church was afraid of people's questions. And we're like, no, please bring your questions. Like, this is the place where we need to have a conversation about that.
Yeah. And Grayson, you asked me the question about group leaders and even Starting Point, right? So I kind of take care of most of all the small group stuff around here. And the easiest way I can answer the question about how I try to talk to group leaders about this topic is I tell group leaders from day one, when they're becoming a group leader or when I'm training them or whatever the case may be, the first time I'm able to have a one-on-one conversation with them is that the most important thing that they can be as a group leader is humble, teachable, curious, and intentional. And to me, that's more important than them being Bible savants or being the expert on all things, whatever study that they're doing. It's more important to me that they create an environment where the people in the group know that their leader is humble. They're not going to be arrogant, and they're not going to think that they know everything. They're going to be teachable themselves. They're going to continue to want to learn themselves. They don't already think, well, I'm the expert in this field, so you're not going to teach me anything. I'm going to teach you. No, they're going to be like, I've got a lot of room to learn too. One, the study that we're going to do is going to help me learn, but I'm also going to learn from the other people in this room too.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're going to be curious. They're going to be genuinely curious about the other people in the group and their lives. They're not going to ask questions just to try to get to a specific answer. They're not going to try to, manipulate the situation so that they get the responses that they want. They're going to genuinely be curious about what is going on in the lives of the people in their group. And they're going to be intentional about purposefully trying to build and invest into the lives of those people. Those 4 character qualities are way more important than any level of Bible knowledge that you could have, because Bible knowledge is important. And I want everybody to continue to be learning about God and about the Bible and what he teaches in it. But that stuff can be learned and gathered over time. Those character qualities, you got them or you don't got them, kind of a situation. And I need that in order to create an environment where the people are going to be willing to learn.
And can you imagine what I'll say the deep psychological connection that you would have with somebody as you get to walk through life with them and figure these things out? That is such a cool opportunity.
I know, it's awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and when you see somebody finally get some of that stuff and the light goes on, oh my word, there's nothing better.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much fun.
And really all 4 of those play into like the main goal of each week of Starting Point, which is like get them to come back next week and continue to have that relationship.
Yeah.
Real quick, one final thing. We know like on a road trip, you get stuck in traffic. We know that each of these stages you could get stuck to. And someone who's stuck in exploration doesn't really connect to a faith system. They kind of bounce between churches or, start going for a little bit and then drop out, or, they create a god of their own making, where they take a little, Christianity and a little Buddhism and a little New Ageism and whatever makes them feel good, and kind of create this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But we know people could get stuck in this stage, and people could get stuck in all these stages. What's one thing that each of you would say to someone who's just like, I've been exploring for so long and I just feel stuck? What is one encouragement that you guys would give?
Well, the first thing I think about is a person in this stage who is maybe feeling like they've been there for longer than they should, or they feel kind of stuck in that stage, is they're going to need to commit. And I don't want that to sound harsh, but that's kind of the next step. It's going from just kind of absorbing whatever you can and kind of this general trying to figure out what this whole church thing is about, which is totally fine. It's okay during this stage to be a bit of a spectator. It's okay at this stage to want to remain anonymous and not have a bunch of people know you, just kind of want to observe a little bit. That is totally okay. But to move from this stage to the next stage, it's time to commit. You need to commit to actually following Jesus, and you need to commit to the community, to the body of believers at the church. And so if you're a person who feels like you're in that position, or maybe you're listening and you know somebody who you feel like is in that position, you want to create for them a space where they're going to be able to, like all the things we've talked about, right? It's safe to be able to come to you and ask you those questions, and they know that they can do that. And you want to encourage them, okay, it's time to start acting on this. We've learned a lot. We've pulled in a lot of information. You've observed for a while. What do you think about it? What do you think about actually acting on it? And not all of the religious law type of stuff, the Jesus stuff, right? This is who Jesus is. This is who the Bible says he is. Do you believe that? Do you not? Let's make a commitment to him. You don't have to make a commitment to me. You don't have to make a commitment to follow all the religious rules and church laws and all that stuff. But how do you feel about Jesus? And let's make a commitment to him. And then let's make a commitment to the community, just not that you have to be like them in every capacity, but that you're going to start to dig into it a little bit. I'm going to stick it out here. I'm going to see what these people are all about, and I'm going to try to connect with them and invest with them. I guess that's what I would say.
Okay. I would say you got to take them out to lunch.
Yeah.
So
I like the sound of that.
If you're stuck in that exploration phase, find somebody that you trust who you can talk to and take them out to lunch or grab coffee or something, and ask them to walk through starting point with you. Ask them to walk through a period of time to say, hey, can we meet once a week for the next 8 weeks and talk through this stuff? I think find that person that you can trust to connect with.
Yeah, just like we said, the hard work of the parenting thing, right? It's like it's harder work to do all the necessary stuff. That's going to be the case of your friend, your coworker, your family member, whoever it is that you know might be in this stage. Is you have to make a decision. Am I going to be willing to put in the work to say, I'm going to just go and hang out with them? I'm going to meet with them. I'm going to take them out to lunch and we're going to talk and we're going to hang out, spend time together, and we're going to really try to work through this thing. If you're not willing to do that, then, well, I'm not going to say disengage. I'm going to say you should be willing to do that.
Yeah.
You need to be willing to do that for the sake of the people around you.
Yep. Totally.
That's really funny that you said that, Wade, because my one thing is like, have the bravery to build one relationship with someone who can help you walk through this.
Nice.
And like, you know, having the bravery, I mean, because it's easy to come in, sit in the back of the church, feel good about yourself and leave.
Yeah.
You know, and then you miss a couple of Sundays, you watch online one Sunday, and then the next time you're there is 5 weeks later. I mean, it's really easy to fall into that pattern and not be known by anyone, but choosing to like intentionally say like, I'm going to build a relationship with one person. I've got these questions, building that relationship and having a conversation, I think is like one of the best things you could do.
Yeah. I like that statement though, because you don't have to come to a church like this and immediately decide, okay, I'm willing to, I'm going to start connecting with several hundred people, right? You don't have to do that. The bravery to make that one connection, which hopefully maybe will lead to more over time, but to just say, I'm going to find that one person that I know that I can, you know, really start to engage on another level with and go from there. I love that. That's great.
And not only do you need to be here, but we need you here.
We do.
It's two-sided.
It is.
Because we need that energy of a different perspective to help us figure things out.
And you are just as important to us as the church may be to you. That's what we do this for, is for the people and the relationships and those connections. We love that. That's what keeps us going every day, you know? So love it.
Good stuff.
This is awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today, Wade.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wade. Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you to all of you who joined us and tuned in for this conversation on Exploring Faith. If you're really in that spot where you're exploring faith, or you know someone, you have a close friend that's really in that spot, Starting Point is like one of our favorite places for you to be able to do that. Matt and I both have a lot of experience with it, and we just absolutely adore Starting Point.
I love it.
It's starting this Sunday. You can sign up online under the registrations tab at Faircreek. But we would love for you to take that step in your walk with Jesus, or, you know, send that to someone if you know that that's where they're at. And then we're continuing the series, Where Are You Going? 9:30 and 11 in the building and online at faircreek.online.church. And we're so happy that you guys joined us today. Let us know in the comments what your experience has been like with exploring faith, or what your experience has been like walking with someone who's exploring faith. We would love to hear from y'all.
Absolutely.
Any final words?
No, I've said it multiple times now. You are not going to want to miss a single message from this series. So join us at 9:30 or 11, like Grayson said, or church online. You can watch us online live too, but you are not going to want to miss it. We hit the next stage this coming Sunday, the build stage. You don't want to miss it. So please join us. We look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Take care. See you later.